One of the things that nice guys don't know how to do very well is get their needs met. And the reason why they don't know how to get their needs met is because they're really poor communicators. And when it comes to the white liberal, he is a very, very, very poor communicator. And he doesn't know how to get his needs met on his own. So what he does is he creates covert contracts with people. And one of the covert contracts the white liberal created was with the Afro-American Negro woman. This covert contract that the white liberal created with the Negro woman was she would get on his social programs like his welfare, his food stamps, his Section 8 housing, his WIC, and his college grant programs, and he would promise to give her, a ticket to the middle class. But because the white liberal does not know how to get his own needs met, he gets his needs met by taking care of this Negro female. But and how does he do that? Through block grants, government grants, and all sorts of government programs. You see, the white liberal gets his money right off the top of those programs, and that's how he gets his needs met. But your Afro-American Negro female, she doesn't understand this because she doesn't understand the pathology of the white liberal. She doesn't understand how nice guys go about getting their needs met. They create these covert contracts where they do this quid pro quo, which is this for that. But because on the surface it looks like he's this nice guy, trying to help out the community, trying to pull people out of poverty, when in actuality your white liberal would be in poverty with everyone else if it wasn't for these government programs. And because the white liberal does not know how to get his needs met, he uses people like this. And this is why your white liberal surrounds himself with mostly women quite a bit, and his group of buffer Negroes. Because the buffer Negroes can't get their needs met either. They don't have the business skills, the social skills, or the technical skills to go out and do for self. So they, go on with the white liberal in the hopes of getting some crumbs from their table, like your Negro pastor, who gets 10% of Negro women's income right off the top of, the economic base that the white liberal created with all his social programs. And your pro-black who also gets, a good chunk of money from your Afro-American Negro female. But, a lot of people don't understand, how this white liberal is a nice guy. Again, he is nice because he is insecure, he is needy, and, he's passive aggressive, and he's manipulative, and most importantly, he's controlling. And the white liberal needs to control the black community because that's the only way he believes he can get his needs met. He feels that if he lets go of the Afro-American Negro, man and woman, he's not going to be able to get his needs met. And most importantly, he needs the Afro-American woman, but the African-American woman doesn't understand why the white liberal desperately needs her under his control. And he needs her to be under his control because, again, that's how he makes his money. He makes his money off of these social programs. He makes his money sending her to school. He makes his money, even from the entry-level jobs he gets, because he gets a tax credit for any job he gives many of these black women. So he has an entire economic system founded on, taking care of this black woman, fixing her and caretaking her. But the whole thing is, if he didn't have black women to fix and caretake, he would be forced to be the mediocre person that he actually is. Because the truth about your white liberal is he is the biggest racist in the room. And he doesn't want anybody to know about it. He truly hates black people, and he does not have their best interest at heart. He's only using black people to, meet his needs. He can't meet his needs on his own. He, for example, just like your, white people after the Civil War when all the slaves left, he's the guy who had no skills, no ability to do for self, and no way of making money for himself at all. And he was one of the guys, a descendant from those type of people. So that's your white liberal in a nutshell. He's a guy, he can't do anything for himself because he lacks the business skills, he lacks the creative skills, he lacks the technical skills to go out and do something for himself. So he needs people to meet his needs through covert contracts. So he'll create a social program in the guise of helping people, when in actuality he's helping himself by skimming money right off the top of that program. And that's how he makes his money. And that's the same way your Negro pastor makes money, because he's, complicit in this, and your pro-black is also complicit in this, and they all make money, off the misery of the Afro-American Negro woman. Because if the liberal really wanted equality, he would have no problem with there being black-owned businesses. He would have no problem with black men having jobs. But the liberal has problems with that because that does not make his world smooth. You see, the liberal does not want competition from African American men because he knows if African American men become the business owners in the community, they're going to want to have a say in the economic and political process. This is why the white liberal goes through your Negro woman, because he knows if he has the Negro woman under his control, long term he can control the Afro-American Negro community. If he has the woman, who was the teacher of culture, passing down these dysfunctional values, his world remains smooth. And one of the things that nice guys enjoy is having a smooth world. A world with no conflict, no problems, no drama, no issues. And the white liberal's world remains smooth by the Negro's world being chaotic. What does that mean? It means the white liberal functions from the Negro's dysfunction. And when he sees these Afro-American Negro women having kids out of wedlock, when he sees black males committing crimes, when he sees black people getting on drugs, when he sees black people, becoming alcoholics, when he sees black people being unemployable, he makes money from that. So he needs the Negro to remain dysfunctional for his world to be functional because, again, in order for the white liberal to get his needs met, he needs to have these social programs funded. And as long as these social programs are being funded by the government and being funded by nonprofits, this white liberal is guaranteed a steady stream of income. So he needs the Negro to remain dysfunctional. He needs the Negro to remain in a backwards position. So that's what the white liberal needs. He needs the chaos that goes on in your Afro-American Negro communities, that goes on every day. He needs that because without that, he has no way of caring for himself, taking care of his homes, sending his kids to private schools, being able to, and even sate his own ego, because as long as a Negro remains in a bottom position, he feels adequate about his position at the top. Another thing with nice guys is that they're very, very insecure. And the white liberal is the most insecure person in the room. He's very uncomfortable about the idea of a black person being equal to him. That's why he does not want black people, to be equal economically to him. He does not like the idea of black-owned businesses. He does not like the idea of black people being in certain, political positions or business positions in management unless they fit his narrative, unless they're following his narrative and become a buffer Negro, which keeps other Negroes out of the way. He's the guy who, whenever somebody comes up to challenge him, the buffer Negro will come and slap them down, like your Negro pastors and your black activists and your pro-blacks. Unless they're one of his talented 10th Negroes, much like the house slave, he has no use for them, because anybody who challenges his hierarchy is a threat to him getting his needs met. You see, white liberal is what he's established in the Afro-American Negro community with the woman is a codependent relationship. And in a codependent relationship, one person has more power over the other than the other. And he needs the Afro-American Negro to be the victim in order for him to have power. As long as he's in the victim position, everything is okay. But one of the tenets, of nice guys and all their work is that they're moderately successful, which is why their social programs, for the most part, just don't work. When you look at social programs, over the last 40 years, we've poured $40 trillion into them, and they haven't been successful really at all. I mean, they're moderately successful. I mean, a handful of people have gotten, off to the so-called middle class promised land. But for the most part, all they have done is create a dependent class of people who have remained in poverty. And that's all due to the white liberal being the nice guy that he is, and, self-sabotaging because of his covert contracts, his strings, and most importantly, his disingenuousness. Because your white liberal is extremely disingenuous. From the start, he never was about helping the Negro achieve a middle class. It was never about supporting the Negro in their endeavors to do better. Your white liberal was all about himself. He only cared about himself. And he was too much of a coward to say what he really wanted, what he really wanted to do. And he doesn't know how to get his needs met. And this is why the country is in the mess that it's in. When you look at Democratic senators, these guys do not know how to get their needs met. They do not know how to solve problems. They always create these big, elaborate, programs with a whole bunch of rules and regulations and a whole bunch of strings when the solutions to these problems, again, are a straight line. And he always uses African Americans as the ones, as the victims, to say that this is what I need to do. This is what we really need this program for. Look at these poor, miserable Negroes. They need to be cleaned up. They need our help. And in actuality, he's the guy who really needs a psychiatrist, to get to the core of his nice guy syndrome and his nice guy pathology, because he's not very nice. He's very needy. He's very codependent, and he's very controlling. And this is because he needs control over the African American community, again, in order to get his needs met. And he needs to use African Americans to get his needs met. Just like the nice guy, will, latch himself onto some female and say that, she's the air that he breathes and all this other foolishness, when he doesn't want the woman for herself. He wants her for the social currency he can get. He wants her for what the other looks that people get from him. He wants her for what he thinks she represents, not for what she really is. And the same thing with the white liberal. White liberal wants to include the Negro because of what he thinks he can get from the Negro, which is brownie points for saying he's not a racist, the economic benefits of block grants and government grants and nonprofits and 501c3 status, and he wants, to be able to say that he is the most, politically caring and, understanding of the issues of people, and he's the most tolerant of people. But in actuality, your white liberal is the least tolerant person in the room. He's the person who, boils and seethes with rage on the inside because he, again, is a racist and his views are truly racist, but he's too afraid to express them directly. So he expresses them in unconscious ways. Like if you look at Hollywood, look at all the media that they produce, and if you look at the whole smooth world theory that I just presented to you about how he wants the world to be in order to have function in the black and in the white community, there has to be dysfunction in the black community. And he expresses that also in other passive-aggressive ways, like the policing of African American communities, the inability, the unwillingness to hire African Americans for positions, because again, he does not want Negro to have economic power. He'll talk about this and say, I really want blacks to have a middle class. I want them to have a good education. And he does passive-aggressive stuff like not hiring black men for jobs, giving people substandard education, and all sorts of stuff that he does. He does all sorts of passive-aggressive things. The policing of black communities, all of it passive-aggressive. And passive in that, yeah, he's got these things here, like social programs and, jobs and stuff, but aggressive in that he only hires women, and then he does and then puts all these strings and stipulations, and the same thing with his social programs. Passive in that he lets people get the program, but aggressive in that there's a whole bunch of strings and stipulations, because that's also another part of the covert contract, is that once you get wrapped up in it, here come the strings. Here comes, the terms are always changing with every passing year. There's one string here and one string there, and there's a whole bunch of hoops for people to jump through. And that's what nice guys do to people on the regular, because they're extremely dishonest. Your nice guy is not an honest person. And when you deal with a nice guy, he is not, he will look like the nicest, friendliest person on the front, but as you get involved with them and you start seeing the truth about them, once you peel back the friendly smile and the veneer, you start to see the monster, behind the surface. And this is with your white liberal. This is what he is. He is a monster, especially to black people. He is too afraid to express that, directly to the Negro. But because the Negro, does not have the critical thinking skills to, examine this nice guy syndrome and understand this nice guy pathology, he winds up believing everything that this white liberal says. He thinks that this white liberal is his friend, and because he has low self-esteem, he sits around looking for the approval of this white liberal, thinking that he has his best interest at heart. And this is one of the big problems with your Afro-American Negro. He thinks, because he has really low self-esteem, he sits there and he says, you know, I need the approval of white people in order to be considered human. And without the approval of a white person, he can't be, you know, the person he, you know, be considered a semblance of human. And he goes out and seeks the approval of any white person, never, you know, judging them by their content of their character, but the color of their skin. And that's what gets him and the black woman into trouble, because they look at white people in some ways as gods, and they're looking at the color of their skin and saying, oh, any white person is approving of me, so that means I have value. Not understand the white liberal only approves of him based on getting his needs met, not on, you know, the merits of the man's character, the merit of the man's values, or the merits of, you know, internal character traits. And that's one of the things when you're a nice guy, with your white liberal, he's very shallow, and he's a very shallow person, and he only, you know, he'll get his buffer Negroes. You know, yeah, they'll have all these education and all this stuff, and they'll be, but he doesn't. He's only using them as tools too. So everything with this white liberal, you know, is really a house of cards. So a lot of people think that this white liberal is their friend, and they think that if they have his approval and his validation, they are somebody. And that's the big problem with the Negro, is that he doesn't see, you know, value in self. He doesn't have a sense of self-worth. He doesn't have, you know, a sense of who he is. So he has to go like the nice guy liberal, you know, because many of these Negroes are nice guys too, because they need approval of somebody else. And it creates that codependent relationship where, you know, you have this victim and abuser set up, and the white liberal is the abuser and the Negro is the victim, and all that does again is lead to a vicious cycle which goes to the bottom. And this is why, you know, Negro communities haven't gone anywhere in 40 years, because they have been stuck in this codependent relationship with white liberals, where they continue to vote straight down the Democratic ticket for the same abuser who beats them, and then they promise them some changes, then they go right back to the same thing all over again. It's like a battered wife. The Negro, except the Negro just doesn't have the backbone to get up and leave. Now, the abused wife will just, you know, she'll threaten to leave, and then the you know, batterer will go out and then go buy her some gifts, but the Negro, you know, he won't do that. And that's why the codependent relationship, you know, remains stalled and going nowhere, and is actually, you know, progressively getting worse. But, you know, that's also a part of nice guy syndrome, because that's what nice guys usually do. The nice guy usually turns into the monster who winds up abusing the women he gets involved with. And she'll go, oh, he was such a nice guy, and then he just turned into a monster. No, he was always a monster. He was always Mr. Hyde, but the Dr. Jekyll, you know, made you think that he was your friend, but this is who he really was. And the same thing with the Negro. Negro thinks that the white liberal, you know, pretty much, it wasn't like that. No, he was always like that, just that you didn't want to see it because you were so busy, you know, wanting the approval of white people and wanting to be liked by white people, and you didn't have the self-esteem and the self-worth to take a look at this white liberal and see him for the true racist and monster he truly is, because that's what a nice guy is. He is not nice at all. He is, again, needy, manipulative, passive-aggressive, and most importantly, controlling. And if he can't have control over people, then he doesn't want to have relationships with people, because everybody has to do things his way in order for things to be right. And in his world, right, it means everything has to go in his world to be smooth. And in his world, for the Negro, he needs dysfunction in order for him to have function. And that's why nothing changes in the African American Negro community. That's all I have to say for this video. Comment, rate, and subscribe.